Hello there. This is Leroy Speedy Quetzal, Q Shaman, back with another video. As always, I want to make people aware of the fact that anything I do is in poetic form to protect myself through my arts. And today's video is called The Gay Thing. And this was the initial post that a friend of mine posted that kind of began this whole discussion. And so he says, in case anyone is wondering about my stance, Black Lives Matter, fuck racism, justice for George Floyd. Rest in peace, George. And, you know, my intent and will goes out to his family. My friend here, Sid Simpatico, is a very beautiful man. I want to give you a little context so that you understand where all this is coming from. I met Sid a long time ago when I was coming out of a marriage, and through my processes of divorce, I had developed a real mistrust for women in my life. I was married 10 years, and I'll just move on from that. So, anyways, when I came out of my marriage, I was hanging out with a friend of mine named Rain in Eugene, Oregon, and it was, this was right around 30 years old, and I had, I had been all my 20s, 10 years I was married, and I had never, I have never really been exposed to the gay community. However, my sister is lesbian, so I just want to point that out. And when coming over to Eugene, I got a chance to meet Sid and Joe, his husband, and I actually had the privilege of going to their marriage. And through that process, I was in a new world, and a new world full of highly sexual people, and it was, it was a little uncomfortable just because I was very traditional, I guess, philosophically, but I welcomed it openly, because I just needed something new in my life. And throughout those years, I was exposed to all kinds of great culture, like beautiful people and creative people. That's one thing I really like to point out. A lot of, like, Sid is like an incredible artist, and in our time that he and I have known each other, I've hired him for many events of mine. He's a stilt walker and a musician, just all kinds of crazy stuff, and just great people. And so, uh, you know, eventually, I was in a world of club kind of goers, and I started promoting and producing events. And I would ask Sid to join me because he has amazing, incredible energy, and he always brings that to his game, and that's what I enjoy. It's that type of person that's going to attract other beautiful, open people. So, I guess I'll just kind of move into this and kind of go back here. So, when I saw this post, the thing that grabbed me first was Black Lives. Okay, now I haven't seen Sid for a long time, but there was a time recently, or in the last 12 years, 12 years ago, that there was a lot of things going on in my life that a lot of my old friends haven't seen, so they don't have the insight to what has been going on in my life since then. An attempt was made on my life, and if you go into my Facebook, you'll see my leg had broke at one point, and I was poisoned. Okay, and my leg looked horrible, broken the tib and the fib, and since then I've been kind of, something. I was just sitting on my living room floor, and my leg fell over. And after the whole experience, just before that, I had come into the awareness that of something that was unique to me, which is my name. And I want people to know that, as an indigenous, which is, I didn't even know I was indigenous back when I had first met Sid. And so through the process of meeting poetry, I took it very serious. This was about a year and a half before my leg broke. And I wanted to understand this language that I used. If I'm going to get into poetry, I felt it my responsibility to at least learn the language, its history, and philosophies that birthed. And so through this process, I've learned that indigenous people, we didn't have the first and last name construct. And so that tells me that, last names are given to us. And I wondered, why are they given to us? And in that process, I recognized very quickly that, last names were given to us to track indigenous. And my last name has kind of haunted me for most of my life. I didn't really like my name when I was a kid because it was so unique and different. It kind of made me stand out, and no one could pronounce it right and all kinds of stuff. But what I found recently, I wanted to define myself. What do people call me when they call me Leroy? We don't just have linear interpretations or intents when we call people by their names. I love people's names. And so when people call me Leroy, it translates French the king. Now this last name is, as you can see, it's not the usual last name, but you can see there's two different names that come along with it. Now, indigenous people, we often named ourselves after animals that were indigenous to our regions. And so Espiti means holy, ghost, spirit. You can see there. And, in my investigations, I learned that in all indigenous cultures, when a person is named spirit, that is a dead giveaway. That's a double entendre there. A dead meaning we all kind of speak for the dead. People came up with these words that we use. And when we use these words, we carry out the intentions of the person who created the word to begin with. And so Espiti is a reference to a cultural or community's healer, an anointed position, much like and I'm not trying to draw any parallels here, but Christ is an anointed position, but that anointment is by the people. Now, in shamanism, that anointment is by Mother Earth herself. Now, the last part of my name, it was spelled Cueta, but I noticed that there's no name there's no word or that is in Spanish, which is Spain-ish, that referred to Cueta, and this was right around 2010 is when I discovered my name, and we were coming up to the Mayan turn of the calendar, and Quetzalcoatl was a reference that was supposed, it has its European definition, but if you investigate, you'll understand that typically any European history has kind of been rewritten according to them and their favor. But when I recognized my name, the last name it translates to Nahual, which is what white people would call a sorcerer, bird, and precious flower, and queen. Now, this is distinct because in indigenous cultures, we didn't necessarily make a distinction. We did make distinctions between male and females, but it wasn't in the physical form. It was more a reference to a philosophical application of nature's processes and emergent properties of creation and destruction. So, now that we got that done, we'll go back to here. I am an indigenous man that has woke up to my indigeneity, and I've recognized that when people use certain words, like I said, we speak for the dead, and those who are not aware of their words carry out the intent of those who created the words. Now, black is a unique word, and it's unique only to the United States. If you go to Africa, they don't refer to themselves as black people, because it's just not in their culture. They have nations. A person everywhere else on the planet, they refer to themselves as the nation they're a part of. But even nations were created by white people. Those lines that you see on any map were put there by white people. Now, my friend Sid, he's not in any way, I wouldn't say intentionally racist, but that's the problem with the U.S. citizens. We don't really understand, and we're not really interested in the languages that we use and the words that we speak. Therefore, we are, I would say, irresponsible with our creativity and awareness. And so if I know that in my practice, I know the word meaning black, So I'm going to come here and I'll get to it. See, when you use the word black, you automatically infer white, because black would not be there without white's definition. Now, I want you to see the definition of white here. Built upon the idea of the British as Christian, freeborn, deserving of rights and privileges from which others can be denied. Now, in indigenous culture, we didn't come up with words like others, because that, in my opinion, is a philosophical application that is sickness and destructive to a communal environment. So the legal standard for whiteness is sufficiently British. White equals tool to divide laborers. White equals superiority to non-whites. White equals work to connect European laborers to the British elite. White equals center for patriarchal power. No genetic shift, a human assertion of power. White identity is only granted relevance by its complement, black identity. Pre-1930, all other than white people were assigned black legal status. Now, this is the lecture that I will put in the description of the video, which I think you should definitely watch to be more aware and responsible when we use these terms. And as always, I say my poetic philosophical application is attached to neither positive or negative connotations unless both comprehensive, simultaneously inherently expressed human conditional intentions are responsibly included. To deny so-called negative emotions like anger, fear, hate, jealousy, fury is to deny our own self-identity, integrity, and responsibility. Now, Sid is unaware that the term black has a legal definition, and when we use that word, we are assigning a status to a people. Now, the legal definition, 1891 Black's Law Dictionary, references black, which means all other than whites, is a reference to legally owned property, and that property is owned by white people. So when he says Black Lives Matter, he said, yeah, they do matter, and they matter in that context. It is a racist application assigning a legal status to a people who have been disinherited from their rightful estate, meaning the United States. If you look into your history, which is why I posted the poem here, he was very upset because I had posted this poem and it said Flaggots. Okay, now I am aware of the terminology of, I'm sorry, Sid, I'm just going to use it. I'm not trying to insult you, but in my application, I'm trying to be as honest and forthright as possible. So I'm aware of the term faggots, okay? And I'm in no way, a gay hater or anything like that. I mean, I love and appreciate all people. I'm just trying to get down to the root causes of our miscommunication and confusion. Excuse me. So Sid came back and he says, I find it very problematic that your title for this piece against racism is riffing off a hate speech against me. Now, I wasn't insulted by, he doesn't know that when he says Black Lives Matter, he's referring to me. So, but I wasn't insulted. I mean, it was meant to assign to me, but I don't identify as black or Mexican or any of those terms because I have a choice to, I'm responsible with my awareness. And he said, he's like, why employ homophobically driven language to make a point against racism? And I would say because they are two of groups that are oppressed. And he said, this is triggering me. Now that word triggering has only recently in the 90s was redefined in Webster's dictionary as a verb, okay? Now, trigger used to only refer to the mechanics of a gun, the mechanical trigger that released the projectile that is a bullet. I'm also a United States Marine, a person who has laid my ass on the line for people to express themselves honestly and openly. And he said, I've literally had my life threatened by people using this word. And I would in no way challenge that. I mean, I know because of my own personal experiences that is a means of people to express their hate. So I said, I would hope you would respect my artistry because he is an artist. And know I've always had the most respect for you and your sexual preference, love. See, I love saying love to a man because typically over misogynistic men are very insecure of their, what most would call femininity. I would just call it humanity, okay? I suppose I should have, and then I stopped myself. Well, no, not really. I simply thought you would respect the art and know who I am and how we've always got along, Sid. I fully understand the use of the word and have also been threatened on a number of occasions for being gay, love. Please, if you can, watch all the piece. It may bring attention to what's being done to all of us. If not, I completely support your censorship if that is your choice. I've always loved you. In fact, you guys were my first gay wedding, and believe it or not, you were a huge part of my feeling comfortable with my own femininity. For that, I forever thank you. I said, and he loved my response, and I said, as always, complete openness and willingness to understand. Thank you, love. I hope you are well, and thanks again. He said, he came in here, he said, I challenge you to consider whether you want to alienate a big part of your audience with your choice of wording, or appeal to them to watch it and hear your points. Now, he's wanting me to receive as much attention as possible, but what I've discovered through my practice of arts is that, and this is kind of strange, but European people, they don't see, in the European philosophy, we don't seem to take away our the experiences. We don't seem to embed the experiences in our genetic memory of the experiences that are happy to us. Those kind of fly by. What tends to happen is we embed the experiences that are, quote, negatively associated with life. We tend to remember those. And so I said, Simpatico, believe me, it's challenging enough to try to remain honest without a filter, but I feel it's necessary because so few people are afforded that privilege tied to jobs and management as planned for us to self-police each other as a social engineering program in full effect. Now, that I don't think people understand the responsibility of a poet. Somewhere in history, the listeners of poetry came to be more important to the poet and public than its purpose. Everyone around me has some type of job where they're restricted to what they're saying because of fear of losing their potential earnings. And so I said, I understand and want to consider everybody, and tried. Then mysteriously, writer's block set in for a year. My ability to simply speak my frustration only deepened depression. Then a year ago, my best friend took his life, my boy AD. And I considered my own. This man was so close to me. This guy was like my brother, my friend AD. And to be honest, he and I had been involved in a sexual act together. Not him and I specifically, but with the woman. But that should, think about that. I'm involved with another man in a sexual act. Is that homosexuality? That is a sexual act. Our body parts were touching at some point, having fun with the woman. But I'm going to move on because that's a whole nother video. So, yes, I had considered taking my own life because this man was very close. I only hope white people, or rather those who choose that identity, consider my experience a true hidden beneath the surface of all melanated people building for hundreds of years. He said, and then he got back to me just recently. He said, okay, but that doesn't speak to the fact that you're coming over here and spamming my page repeatedly with an article that is titled with a riff on a word that has been used against me as hate speech. Okay, I understand that. And that's why I did not use the actual word. If we're going to speak literally to the terms, I did not use a racial slur. I used one that I knew would be connotatively associated with the word for that reason, because it'll usually strike up some insecurity within all of us, but if we're going to talk to the specifics of words, then if we're going to talk in these specifics of words, then we have to address them in the order of operations that they've been presented. Now, he's concerned about a word that doesn't necessarily is not spelled in the context of which he's speaking of, but this one is clearly defined as privately owned property. So here he is promoting Black Lives Matter. He's promoting that people are black, and that includes me, and that includes being privately owned property by white people. And he says fuck racism, but he's unaware, just like most people are, and I'm not trying to blame Sid at all. He's a beautiful man. I've never felt any type of racism or anything by Sid. He's just not that type of cat. He's beautiful. But unintentionally, he's irresponsible with his speech and his language that has been developed for these purposes. He's using the term black lives. And then he's contradicting himself by saying fuck racism about a man who was murdered by police. Now, in order for those to have been misled to see correctly, meaning within the proper historical context, they must have a clear analytical understanding of the origin, strategies, mechanics, purpose, and methods of the device that has blinded them in the first place. We must understand most all words we, other than white, are indoctrinated with come with political and social histories that represent a cultural intent of those who created the language. Words are not simply terms we use to communicate ideas. In complement, not opposite. Nothing in nature opposes the other. Complementary systems are meant to complete the other, to bring to perfection. That is the definition of complement. In complement, they are also a means of manipulating consciousness and can be used to prevent critical thinking and creativity. It is scientifically proven words have a measurable physiological effect within our minds and bodies that, as shaman, I'm convinced is the leading cause of nearly all so-called physiological, psychological, sociological, historical, environmental, etc. diseases. If you know any basic biology, you'll understand. All of life begins with the cell, with all genetic material necessary to form living beings, male or female, plant, animal, human, etc. View any animal, including ourselves, at inception under a microscope, and you'll see identical zygotes form, all female at that. At a point in time throughout life's inherent emergent expressions, not evolution, because evolution is Darwinian theory. And if you understand, I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to go to if we're going to be referring to biology, then we have to speak within the proper historical context. So, on the origin of species, or more completely, on the origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Favored races in the struggle for life. Published 24th November 1859, is a work of scientific literature by Charles Darwin, which is considered to be the foundation of evolutionary biology. Okay, Charles Darwin was cousin to Sir Francis Galton. Do you know who Sir Francis Galton was? If you look here, it's clearly stated, preservation of struggle for life. Now, if we go to Sir Francis Galton is a Victorian statistician, whatever. He basically he's responsible for the word eugenics. It's a set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve genetic quality of human population, typically by excluding people and groups judged to be inferior and promoting those judged to be superior. That is the cousin to Charles Darwin. Now, if you go to Johann Blumenbach, or rather, let me see here. I'll go to my notes, rather. And thank you for your patience, by the way. Okay, so Johann Blumenbach. Classification, catastrophic extinction. Okay, so this man is responsible for the classification of race based on geographical and local skin color. Now, if you understand who Blumenbach is, you'll understand that he is basically responsible for the term black. Yes, those three men, Johann Blumenbach, who created colorism, Sir Francis Galton, who, oh, by the way, Johann Blumenbach is the father of anthropology. He's the person who created the study or the subject cultural, collegiate field of study of anthropology, which was also a major of mine in college. I also studied psychology and sociology. These are all applications of Western European based, quote, sciences that are having expressions right now. I mean, we're talking about evolutionary biology of viral diseases, that is also being played out simultaneously as these racist applications are being played out likewise. So we'll go back to here and there we go, back to the gay thing. So, inherent expression of human population. Okay, so view any animal, including ourselves in inception, under a microscope, and you'll see identical zygotes, all female at that. At a time throughout life's inherent expressions, human populations had consisted of nothing but hermaphrodites. You won't find that in many books, but there was that time. This is information that is encoded within my DNA as shaman that I have access to, that it's my responsibility to bring to my community to raise awareness, to dispel confusion. This consistency gave way again through nature's inherent emergent properties, not evolution, because that is a theory. It is not factual-based information, producing a random mutation single-sex being that emerged in different parts of the planet simultaneously. Single-sex populations eventually reached equilibrium, surpassing soon thereafter, relatively speaking. We single-sex expressions became majority, thus leading to near extinct hermaphrodites numbers present today in small populations found around the world, mostly densely populating India. Maybe you haven't noticed, but men's ovaries, you got to understand we're using a language here that has purposely and distinctly delineated sexes. In indigenous culture, we did not make up such words because, as I said, those words represent a sickness and disease that creates confusion and delineation between everything and everybody. It removes the personification of what the plant is. In my practice, there is no distinction or division. Sid is Leroy, named Sid, who happens to look lighter in skin and different hair, and I am Sid, named Leroy, who happens to be melanated, with different tattoos. This is my practice, but because of the indoctrination that we all endure through methods of schooling, which is just indoctrination, we tend to create confusion amongst ourselves. So, men's ovaries exist outside the body as testicles, or this could be explained in complement as women's testicles are inside the body as ovaries. Of course, European science strictly labels us differently for the sake of delineation, but we're essentially the same organism. Think about that for a bit. Male and female contain both testosterone and estrogen, only at different levels. Give any man estrogen, he will develop breasts. Give a woman testosterone, she will grow an Adam's apple that's already there as her voice deepens, finding her hair growing places prominently in males. If one wants to know who came first, that's easy. Neither, because we're both. Get it? That is to say, the being with a reproductive system allowing them to give birth was the first. Chromosomes must be added to a female to make a male. We all start off as female. If they were to teach this in schools, do you think that we would have less hate or confusion about our own sexualities? When we have this confusion, they're able to take advantage of us through many different ways. When I see gay men fighting for their rights to marriage, of course that's the trick. We want to fight for rights, but what is marriage? Are you aware that marriage, the marriage certificate was created in 1923? It is printed on bond paper like our birth certificates that were established in 1928. And that bond paper is made from, I'll even show you, I'll get down to some serious specifics. You check out your dollars, it's the same paper that our birth certificates are printed on, and likewise marriage certificates. That paper is security paper. It's a specific type of paper that is mixed with cotton, okay? Cotton. Now, cotton has a very distinct identification here in the United States because, quote, black people picked cotton. Now, my mother actually picked cotton. Yes, when she was a child born in 49 in Texas, she picked cotton alongside with, quote, blacks. But if we had been just a few years before that, we'd have all just been niggers, which is what Sid here was calling us, basically, by calling us black. But I'm not upset with that because I do not identify in unaware, ambiguous terms that were specifically created to create confusion. So, that paper that it makes up our dollars was also in conjunction with Levi's, okay? Levi's gives them the cotton, it gives paper that distinct feel and sound. Now, if anyone is more aware of what's going on here, please chime in. I would love to hear somebody that could trump my awareness because I do not care about intelligence. Intelligence, you can read every book in the world. It won't make you aware. I seek only awareness. You can see the distinct difference between a person who thinks they are intelligent and one who knows he is aware. So, oh, by the way, back to the fighting for rights of marriage. Now, that was a tricky little thing that this government did to gay people that I despise, not the gay people, the government. Government is two words, govern coming from gubernare, which means to mold or manipulate, and ment comes from Latin menti, mentai, mentalis, or mind. So the conjunctional word is manipulation or molding of mind, gubernare mentali. That is the etymological derivative of the language that you speak, that has been indoctrinated into me, that I am responsible for. So, chromosomes have to be added to make a male. Common sense tells us it takes both sexes to create us, so we are inherently both sexes, never to be separate. Like a cell splits holding hands, so as never to forget we are the other's complement. DNA holds the code of distinct beings instructing cell replication, and RNA transcribes performing instruction held in DNA. This inherent genetic sequence is also defensive encoded in DNA as an emergent property performed by RNA during reparation cycles. Indigenous cultures made delineations between sexes, but not the physical sexual beings. Our philosophy was acknowledging complementary, emergent, creative, and destructive properties of life and the natural world. Now, a lot of people think creation, is the first thing, but no, destruction is the first process of creation. If you want to go, perhaps like build a pot, like a pottery, you have to go destroy an ecosystem to gain the clay to create the pot. So these are just some things that I think that people should be aware of so that we're not led astray and led into in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, Sid is in an argument right now, but I do not argue with people. To argue is to question my knowledge, which is research to the point of absurdity. People like to argue with me because most people are unaware and insecure in their positions because they're not fully studied or researched. And so, and that is not to insult Sid. Sid is a beautiful man who I've supported in his livelihood by giving him money to earn from his artistry. I mean, I love him. He's a great person. Him and his husband Joe. I hope you all still are married because I love you guys both. I hope you've never felt any type of gay hatred from me, because when I first met these guys, I was involved with a friend of mine, Rain, who I was very intimate with. They would always tell us, why don't you guys fuck already? And it's like, I was just scared to give my trust over to women. And I would cuddle my boy Rain. I was a scared fuck because of this poisonous definition of love that we're indoctrinated with to seek since we're in like birthed. Who I've also made a poem about, like if you want to see it, Pure Love on Medium. So I said, he said, I challenge you to consider whether he want. He said, okay, so here he's, and I know he's not meaning to, but I'm saying this could also be interpreted as he wants me to change my artistic application. When I would never tell somebody to change their art, you know. I'm not saying that's his full intent here, but it is part of his intent. And so that's what I was trying to tell him here, you know, like. So after that, I said, okay, I was thinking about. I woke up today and I was thinking about Sid because I just didn't want to leave him out there thinking that, other than the beautiful experiences that he and I have created together. I mean, this man is very talented, and I appreciate him for that. And so he got mad at me, and I said posted Flaggots twice, and I'm like, okay, yeah, does it really matter whether I posted it once or twice? I understand, but like it's out there, and I didn't think it would hurt, you know, too much. But then, you know, I gave him this because I do a lot of work for people, you know, like in here, this specific video, you know, I proved the CDC was lying, and I have Fauci, I have Redfield. Redfield is on here. He said he thought that AIDS was a judgment for gay people. And I'm like, what? Fuck you, piece of shit. My sister's gay, you know what I'm saying? And I don't even, to be honest, Sid actually labels me, he said something, but it does his speech. He's like, I told you it's a trigger word, and you posted it. He's like, for the second time, because of this, you have alienated yourself, and I don't believe it's acceptable for you, a straight person. See that right there? He's assigning, once again, because of his European indoctrination, he's trained to assign me as a straight person. But in my cultural practice, which I'm not allowed the freedom to express, obviously, without, you know, being bombarded with accusations of being hateful, we did not work within the construct of gay or straight. We are just beings, not even human beings, because hue, I don't know if you know what hue means. That means reference to color. Human, these terms came from these sciences that we're indoctrinated with. So he's trying to assign me a sexual preference, which I don't claim any of those. I don't claim heteros, homos. I don't claim any. I would rather just be myself. And he said, to appropriate hate speech, word used against me. To appropriate? If anyone's appropriated anybody here, it's you guys. You're talking to a man who does not know his indigenous language, nor has any reference to any indigenous cultural practices other than the ones that I've remembered, because I do not learn. We do not learn. I cannot teach anybody anything. European science has only discovered DNA in 1958. My people's art has held DNA in its practice and artistic expressions for well over 5,000 years. The definition and knowledge and wisdom that is drawn from DNA is just a few years old. The wealth and pool of knowledge that I draw from dwarfs anybody who encounters me for the specific purpose of being reminded. I cannot teach. DNA holds all information encoded in the whole world. For instance, you cannot conceive of or create a computer from information outside of self. That information is held within our DNA. Shaman have been known to have practices where we can draw from that memory. But since he's not interested in the people he's committed genocide against, Sid, and I'm not saying this again, I'm just speaking in factual terms. I'm not trying to accuse you of anything, but this is just the cultural historicity of European domination of the world. You think it's a coincidence that the whole world is fluent in English? No, there was reasons why we have been robbed of our language and cultural practices. And it's because of this. This is an example of a European manipulation and indoctrination. Because he wasn't interested enough to just ask me why I might do certain things. The European tendency is to accuse and try to mold them, assimilate us into your cultural practices. But that's the linear applications. I am cyclical. Linear is two-dimensional. I am three-dimensional, a tripulated sequence. Your linear attempts to appropriate me are useless in the cyclical realm of a nahual, which is the appropriate term for what I refer to as shaman. Shaman are tungos from Siberia. I cannot technically be a shaman. I am nahual, which is of this land. So, he said, against me, he said, and then expect a high five. Or I don't expect a high five. My art is not to acquire applause or, approval. My art is to challenge. It's supposed to provoke thought and emotions. A lot of people forget that. So follow from me. And I would hope that he would try to want to follow. Maybe he would be reminded of. I'm not trying. Like I said, I can't teach anybody anything. You already have the information inside your DNA. So technically, all I can do is remind people of what we already know. He said, any more than it would be acceptable for me to add a letter to a racial slur and then pretend I was somehow removing the negativity from it. Again, linear application, binary philosophy, he's stuck within the philosophy of either positive or negative. And in my philosophy, nothing is inherently one or the other. It is both simultaneously. So if he was to call me a racial slur, I wouldn't even be affected. I mean, I am not whatever racial slur he would try to use, or anyone has tried to use. As a matter of fact, the one time someone almost kicked my ass for being gay because I painted my nails, and the guy was like trying to threaten me, and I was just like, look, I'm not gay or straight or any of them. I'm just me. The second I give creed to that person's accusations, then I validate his premise. So, as an aware person, I am not affected by these ineffectual, ignorant terms that we are trained to be affected by to cause confusion and thus hostility and hate. I mean, he said, I appreciate you saying you respect and care for me. And that made a positive effect. Well, it was also a negative effect. You see, like, it's a negative effect because if I say I respect and care for him, it's like I'm also disrespecting myself by not, if I would have been a regular person, that would have also just been like trying to fit within the mold and be like, oh, I'm not trying to cause any disruptions here. I just want to go along with everybody. And that would have been me, a negative effect on myself and the cultural appropriation of my people. Not being acknowledged here, not given the space to present my art and then be asked questions, not to endure accusations. He said, but this is a violation of his boundaries. Okay, well, I was hoping that Sid would know that I would never try to violate anybody. If anything, that's a violation of his own boundaries. He's saying fuck racism, but he's calling us black. And that branding of a people led to the murder of George Floyd, because nothing will be done about his murder. I hate to, ruin your party, but as with Tamir Rice, as with Eric Garner, has anything been done about that? No. And if anything is done, what's going to be the outcome? Oh, you and I are going to pay for it. If his family gets $9 million, let's say, we have to pay for the irresponsible and racist applications and philosophy of this culture that is European, white, that no one seems to want to acknowledge, which is what all I'm trying to do here is trying to bring awareness to people. You notice that Sid wasn't upset about government projects that say, kill all niggers. He didn't bring attention to this. No, he would rather have said, it's his post. He's trying to make a stance about Black Lives Matter. And I'm saying that poem that I released is about blacks. It's explaining the constitutionality of white supremacy in case law that I don't think he even read. Because if he would have read, then he would have understood what I'm trying to say here. I said even to his friend here, I was merely drawing parallels between black and gay communities, which is who HIV/AIDS was created to exterminate. Please at least try and look at the material with an open mind and heart. Here's another, Carrie Mullis, who created PCR testing for COVID-19 at this moment, who died last August. He's the person who made PCR testing possible. And said, this guy comes at me, I'm not going to pretend that I got past the first slide. He didn't look at anything. How can you make an assessment without reviewing material? But it seems like you're only hijacking the thread of some kind of shitty self-promotion of pretty wacko ideas. Look at, he's like, HIV doesn't, yes, he's not willing to look. None of these people, look, Sid's there, Lisa Bogan, none of them have even looked at the materials that I presented. And because of that, they are perpetuating the racism that he pretends to be opposing. You know, like that is the confusion that we will all experience if we are irresponsible and neglect to look up our cultural histories, the language that we speak, everything. That's what my application as a poet is meant to do. But because white people don't care to give us the same privileges that they only care about themselves, for themselves, they won't, we're going to keep going around in circles. Sid, I deeply love and respect you and Joe. I always have. And I was hoping that you would be a little more open to art. You know, I have a lot of friends who are artists, but I don't know any real, true people who are art. There is a difference. You know, when a painter sits behind their easel and canvas, they become an artist, you know? My application in everything I speak, say, think, do is art. That is my application, my spiritual practice presented here. If any of you like this material, I hope that you would like, you know, hit the notification bell and subscribe to my channel, because I really do care for everybody here, but I'm not given much of an opportunity from open people to communicate on a level that would encompass our weak linear understanding and applications in life. As always, thank you very much for watching. This is Q Shaman. And again, Sid, I hope that you would review material that I presented, because it would really make a difference in the people that you're trying to make a difference for. I love you all. I'm out. Ciao.